Hey guys, we are in Ezekiel 25 through 27 today, and it's this judgment on different nations, which we saw in Jeremiah, but it's also in Amos and Zephaniah and Isaiah. And all these prophets were not friends. So like Isaiah was actually 120 to 150 years before these other guys. I remember Jeremiah is in Jerusalem where Ezekiel's in Babylon. And then Amos and Zephaniah were prophets who were actually in other kingdoms. So a bunch of these prophecies we can actually find them in these other books because it was showing that like God was speaking, God was moving. It was the same spirit that told Ezekiel, told Jeremiah, told Isaiah 120 years ago, told Amos, who's in a different area. It's all affirming that what God is saying is going to happen. And so today, I kind of got wrapped up in the history of all of it. I'm like, okay, where I want to connect these things that God is speaking into the completion, the fulfillment of what this is saying in actual history, like it that you could read in a history book. So not if you're a theologian, but if you're a historian. So taking, separating Bible and God from it, of this actually happened. Because I think sometimes we don't connect the two. We're like, oh, this is our religion book. But actually this is historical events that took place in our world, that are true. Like sometimes people think these are just good stories, in a theological book, but this actually took place in history. So I'm going to share with you a bunch of that this morning, which, so we're going to start off in chapter 25 here with verses 1 through 7. So Babylon invades in the 6th century, and Ammon lost his independence. The nation lost its independence, and later disappearing as a distinct group of people as they became part of Arabia. And by the New Testament era, the Amorites no longer existed as a nation at all. So this just totally played out. Verse 7 that says, "Therefore, behold, I will stretch out my hand against you and will hand you over as plunder to the nations, and I will cut you off from the people and will make you perish out of the countries. I will destroy you. Then you will know that I am God." So this fully happened, like took place. By New Testament, they were completely wiped out. A whole nation of people, a whole ethnicity group, guys. That's like this judgment that came through. Okay, and then 8 through 14, Nebuchadnezzar also conquers Moab and Edom, and Moab came under the providence of Babylon in the 16th century and now no longer appears in records as a distinct people. And Edom went under Babylon. Then the Nabateans pushed them out of their homeland, and they settled in Jerusalem as Edomians. That was like their nationality. They switched to that. And Herod the Great was the last major historical figure from that line. And then after the Roman wars, they completely disappeared. So this is like history book, guys. This is like, if you go on National Geographic, like history side, okay? This isn't biblical side. This is this actually being fulfilled and taking place in real time. Well, years ago time, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Okay, and then 15 through 17, Babylon conquered the Philistines, and they never returned like Israel did. They never returned to their land. And by the 5th century, they were absorbed into Palestine. And by the New Testament, their ethnic group no longer existed, okay? All of these, all erased as God has spoken, because no word of his fails. And we go on to see now Tyre, which this has 2 chapters of it because they were just such a huge, massive nation that was well known, and they were like the Amazon, okay, like the Amazon, that you get delivered, the Amazon of its time. Everything was happening there. It was well connected, riches, trading post, everyone networked there. Like it was just this huge, massive place. So they got 2 chapters. Actually, I think we only read 2 of them today. But I think tomorrow, is against the Prince of Tyre. So it actually is going to go to 3 chapters on Tyre itself. But so Babylon in 586 through 573 BC, Babylon sieged Tyre for 13 years. destroying the mainland. And then get this, in 332 BC, Alexander the Great literally scraped debris into the sea, which was verse 12. How cruel is that when you see it like happening? It says, they will plunder your riches and loot your merchandise. They will break down your walls and destroy your pleasant houses. Your stone and timber and soil will cast into the midst of the waters. Literally, this is exactly what happened with Alexander the Great. And then they captured and destroyed them, enslaving tens of thousands of them. And then later, waves of nations kept conquering every time they attempt to rebuild. Romans came through 64 BC. Then the Muslims came through and conquered it in the 7th century AD. Then the Crusaders came through in the 12th century, and then Momaluks in the 13th century. So Tyre was this great ship that sank beneath the waves of conquerors. And that's what it's talking about, is this big ship as a picture of it, and these waves overpowering it and knocking it down over and over again. And that's what happened, is nations kept coming in and destroying it, and it never rebuilt to what it was ever again. And I think after this last, if I remember right, the last one, like it was completely done and just like no longer rebuilt, or even attempts to. So this was the history of what we see here, of God's word being fulfilled. Like no word of his stops. Like it is when he speaks it and it goes forth. And as we saw, multiple prophets were given this word because of the to assure that this was actually going to happen. And it did. It took place in our history, in the globe's history, right? The world's. Okay, now some quick little verses that stood out to me. In verse 2 of chapter 26, you see, let me actually look at it real quick. Son of man, because Tyre said concerning Jerusalem, the gates of the people are broken and have swung open to me. I shall replenish now that she is laid waste. So Tyre took joy in their fall, and celebrating someone's downfall is short-sightedness. That's not what we're called to do, actually. We shouldn't use other people's pain for our own gain, right? Jealousy and gloating can creep in to the workplace. It can creep into ministries. It can creep into friendships, into families, this gloating and jealousy. It drives me nuts when my kids laugh at a sibling or make fun of a sibling when they fall or have a hardship. That just breaks my heart. But God calls us to mourn with those who mourn, not to profit from pain. So we have to really keep our hearts humbled, guys. That's super important. And then verse 20 also stood out to me, which is, these 7 world powers may shine for a season. So there's all these, top nations, and they were rich and well off, and they shined for a season. But pride and rebellion always ends in the pit, guys. It always ends up being a downfall, which is so sad. And then verses 4 through 9. This area is going through just the appearance that they are clothed in this elegant colors, and they are adorned and have all this jewelry. And when you're putting more time and thought into your appearance than you are with God, that's a big issue. So think through that. If you're spending more time doing your makeup in the morning, putting on your outfits, making sure you get your facials once a month, getting your Botox, whatever you do, whatever your routine is, I don't really care. But when you're spending more time in your appearance instead of on your heart with the Lord, that needs to be a red flag, okay? Because that needs to get in your schedule before everything else, because that's what God's looking at, is the heart, okay? And we need to examine that. What are we building our worth on, right? These bodies will decay. Where's our heart at, And then verses 10 through 14, Tyre was well connected everywhere, but it wasn't anchored anywhere. It wasn't standing on God. It was just connected to a bunch of people. And when judgment came, did you see what happened? That no network here that they had, none of them saved them. None of them helped them. None of this mattered, all these connections that they had. And we can take this to heart too. Our security should not rest on human reliance. It should rest on God alone. So again, are we spending all our time making sure we are well connected to all the right people to know the who's who, but don't know the mega God, right? Like that's an issue. That's a problem. That needs to be a heart check if that's us. I'm not saying you need to just cut all looking good, like cut all that out, or networking, cut all that out. You shouldn't have friendships. I'm not saying that. I'm saying simply start putting in habits to connect you to the source, because if that is where you're spending your time and your appearance and connections, it's gonna fall short eventually and you'll have no ground. Okay, so have that just be something you're working into your routine and into your day. Whether it's just I'm gonna spend 10-15 minutes in the Bible, and then I'm gonna go on like a 10-15 minute walk. I'm gonna drop my kids off at school and I'm gonna go for a walk, or I'm gonna sit in my car and I'm just gonna pray. I'm gonna set a timer for 15 minutes and really set apart time to pray and hear from God and be with him. Whatever that needs to look like for you. It doesn't have to be big and crazy, but it should look like a routine that you find important that you need to put in your schedule. Also, they were known for their like luxe wealth, yet they, that too, none of that saved them either, right? And then lastly, verses 33 through 34, Tyre was, like I said, the Amazon of the ancient world. And this usefulness is not the same as righteousness. And it came to mind, just a person can contribute greatly to society, right? We've seen amazing people contribute in big, huge ways to society, right? Creating incredible inventions, but they totally miss the one who gives life. And so that leaves them to this sad end, that all this effort they're putting into the world and society, that it ends with them, that a lot of times it comes crumbling, or they're completely forgotten about, in history. And bottom line, that their end goes apart from God. They have an eternity apart from God. That's hell, right? That this greatness ends in rubble. And really, what were they building for then, right? If it's not for eternity first, what are we building for? Be sure to build on the firm foundation of God is kind of a big picture here that I want to keep pushing with you guys, because that's literally the only, like, if our eyes are set on eternity, everything else will fall into place. Like I still have time to do my makeup, to have, like, I think cute clothes, and still have a lot of strong friendships. Yet I'm in this word every day. Then I'm making these videos. This probably takes me, since doing these videos, my Bible has expanded to like taking like an hour and a half, 2 hours. That's not what it normally takes. Is normally 30 minutes. But I have to read it and then writing like down some things that I found, and then looking up some things I want to share with you guys, and making these videos and then typing it up. So it's expanded big time. And then I take like an hour walk. I try to do that every day. Sometimes that is only, 20 minutes up and down the driveway until a kid wakes up from a nap. Sometimes that's longer, but making that a priority, everything else does fall in place. You will have time for everything else. God knows all the things you need to accomplish. So you don't need to feel like you're sacrificing something for you to give to him. Start there actually, and see how much he actually blesses you for that. And we'll see you guys tomorrow.